In 2019, I put our house up for sale on Craigslist, trying to attract potential buyers quickly. But to my shock, I saw our house listed by another unknown person. The address was different, but the photos were unmistakably ours. Alarmed, I showed my wife and we decided to drive to the location provided. It led us to a dilapidated house on the outskirts of town. We approached cautiously, and after a moment of hesitation, I knocked on the door. The door creaked open, and a man greeted us. His face was full of scars. I'm talking about maybe 10 or even more. His appearance was really unsettling, giving him a permanently haunted expression. Despite his frightening appearance, he was surprisingly polite and invited us in for coffee, offering to explain the situation. My wife and I exchanged uneasy glances but decided to step inside, because we did boxing and we kind of felt confident. The interior of the house was dimly lit and cluttered, with an odd assortment of furniture and decor. The air smelled faintly of mildew and something else I couldn't quite identify. The man, introducing himself as Edward, led us to a small kitchen where he started brewing coffee. We sat down at a wobbly and screwed-up table, and I couldn't help but notice the odd assortment of knives on the counter, all meticulously clean and gleaming under the dim light. So Edward joined, setting down 3 cups of coffee. His hands were steady, but there was an underlying tension in his movements. As we sipped the bitter coffee, Edward began to speak. He told us that he had mistakenly received our house listing through a series of miscommunications and had thought it was meant for him. He apologized profusely for any confusion and assured us that he would take the listing down immediately. But there was something really unsettling about his tone, a forced sincerity that didn't quite ring true. My wife shifted uncomfortably in her seat, and I could see the growing fear in her eyes. I tried to steer the conversation towards more casual topics, hoping to diffuse the tension. Edward seemed to relax a bit, telling us about his collection of antique knives, which explained the display in the kitchen. He offered to show us his collection, but we politely declined, saying that we were busy that day. The conversation took an eerie turn when Edward began talking about his fascination with scars and how each one told a story. He recounted how he had gotten some of his own scars, each tale more gruesome than the last. My wife and I exchanged worried glances and decided it was time to leave. We stood up, thanking Edward for the coffee and the explanation, and made our way to the door. Edward followed us, his gaze intense. As we stepped outside, he suddenly grabbed my arm. I froze, heart pounding. He leaned in close and whispered, "Be careful who you trust online." We hurried to our car, the unsettling encounter replaying in my mind. As we drove away, my wife remained with her face pale, literally. We decided to report the incident to the police, hoping to prevent any future misunderstandings or worse. But something even worse happened that night. As we laid in bed, sleep eluded us. And around midnight, I heard a soft tapping on the kitchen window. My heart raced as I sat up, straining to listen. The tapping continued slowly. I crept to the window, peeking through the curtains. And I saw him. Edward was standing outside with his scarred facial expression. He wore a twisted smile, his eyes glinting with a sinister intent. I backed away slowly, trying not to make a sound, and luckily he didn't see me. I grabbed my phone and called 911, whispering urgently to the operator. As I spoke, Edward's smile faded, replaced by a look of pure malice. He started tapping on the window harder, as if taunting us. My wife joined me, her face was a mask of fear. The police arrived quickly, their lights flashing through the night. Edward disappeared into the night, leaving us shaken and terrified. The officers searched the area but found no trace of him. They assured us they would keep a watch on our house and advised us to stay vigilant. The rest of the night was a blur of restless anxiety. We kept the lights on and stayed together, jumping at every noise. Dawn finally broke, bringing a sense of relief. The police followed up with us, but there were no further sightings of Edward. We decided to take our house off the market and tighten our security. About a week later, we found out something online that was horrifying. We saw Edward, and he did something to a man that's not worth mentioning here. The man was in the hospital really screwed up. Then they got Edward and he went to jail. The experience left a lasting mark on us. We don't even know if his name was really Edward. Probably not. While we never saw him again, the memory of that night stayed forever. A chilling lesson of the dangers that the internet can bring to your life. I guess you literally can't trust nobody out there. I remember when I was selling my guitar for $80 one time. This guy sent me messages interested in buying it. I sent him my address because I was moving from that house really soon. He showed up about 3 hours late, around 9 p.m., and he didn't look like he felt things. His eyes were lifeless. I'd never seen something like this before. It was actually very creepy. He checked out the guitar for about 40 goddamn minutes, and then he pulled out a $20 bill and some gift cards from places I'd never heard of before. He wanted to trade them for the guitar. I told him that I wasn't going to trade my guitar for this, of course, but then he started to be really aggressive, to the point that I literally got scared of him. He began to raise his voice, his lifeless eyes narrowing into an unsettling glare. My heart raced, and I could feel my palms getting sweaty. I tried to stay calm, telling him that I needed the full $80 or there would be no deal. He stepped closer, invading my personal space, his breath reeking of something sour. "You don't understand," he hissed. "I need this guitar." I glanced around, hoping a neighbor might be outside, but the street was eerily quiet. My gut told me to end this encounter as quickly as possible. "Look," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "I'm sorry, but I can't accept anything less than $80, man. Maybe we can arrange another time when you have the full amount." For a moment, he just stared at me, with a blank expression on his face. Then, without warning, he grabbed the guitar, yanking it towards himself. I instinctively held on, and we struggled for a few tense seconds before he let go, causing me to stumble backward. "Fine," he said. "I'll be back." With that, he turned and walked away. I locked the door behind him and leaned against it, trying to calm my heart that was racing. The whole encounter had left me shaken. I tried to rationalize his behavior. Maybe he was just really desperate or going through something tough. But a nagging feeling in the back of my mind told me there was something more sinister there at play. Later that night, I was unable to sleep. I thought about calling the police, but what would I say? That a creepy guy tried to buy my guitar with gift cards? They'd probably laugh it off, you know? Around midnight, just as I was beginning to doze off, I heard a noise outside on my backyard. My heart skipped a beat, and I sat up, straining to listen. There it was again, with a faint shuffling sound. Slowly, I got out of bed and crept to the window up top to get a better look. And it was the same guy from earlier, standing in my front yard, staring at my house. That was the moment that I knew I fucked up. Why the hell did I send this dude my location, even if I was really close to moving out? I wondered if he was there to try to get the guitar or if I should just accept his offer and end this. But that guitar meant a lot to me, you know, since I was a kid. His face was hidden in the shadows, but I could imagine his eyes lifeless and cold. I froze, unsure of what to do. My phone was on the nightstand, but I was too scared to move, fearing he might see me. Suddenly, he started walking slowly towards the house. Panic surged through me, and I scrambled to grab my phone. I called 911 and I tried to explain the situation to the operator. They assured me that a patrol car was on its way and told me to stay inside and keep the doors locked. I hung up and rushed to the front door, checking the locks. Everything was secure, but I still felt vulnerable. I could hear my dog, Jackie, in the backyard, barking furiously. I ran to the back door, opening it just enough to call him inside. He bolted in, his hackles raised and teeth bared, growling towards the front of the house. Minutes felt like hours as I waited for the police to arrive. I kept peeking through the blinds, but the guy was nowhere to be seen. Had he left, or was he hiding, waiting for the right moment to strike? The uncertainty was screwing me up. Finally, I saw the flashing lights of a police car pulling up in front of my house. I opened the door just enough to talk to the officers, explaining what had happened. They took my statement and said they would patrol the area throughout the night. One of them even offered to stay parked outside for a while to make sure the guy didn't come back. As the night dragged on, I sat in my living room with Jackie by my side, feeling a little safer knowing the cops were there. Eventually, exhaustion took over, and I dozed off on the couch. When I woke up, it was morning. The police car was gone and everything seemed normal again. I never saw that guy again and I moved to Colorado. I decided to be a lot more cautious with online transactions, meeting buyers in public places whenever possible. And I never forgot those lifeless eyes staring at my home in the night. I used to sell stuff on Craigslist a while ago, but this is about one specific day which terrorized me forever. The meetups were always in a high-traffic public place, like a Walgreens parking lot, McDonald's, Starbucks, and places like that. That time I was going to meet a guy by the name of Frank to sell him some clothes and a pair of shoes. We were going to meet in a big Walmart parking lot. We agreed to meet at 3 p.m., and there I was waiting for this guy. He had no picture online and he just said he was wearing all black clothes and that he had a red car, so I just waited. About 30 minutes later, a red sedan car pulls up right behind mine. I could swear it was the guy at first. He was wearing all black too, so I waited for him to come greet me and say hi. But then he looked like he was searching for something in the car, so I didn't want to bother and come at him to say hi, so I waited again. Some time went by, and he was still there, checking something or searching for something. I couldn't know exactly. But then I could see that he pulled up a hunting knife out of nowhere. And at that moment I began to get scared. Like, what the hell? My heart started pounding in my chest when I watched him fumble and then literally kiss the knife. A million thoughts raced through my mind. Was this some kind of trap? Should I just leave now? But leaving meant I'd have to drive past him. And I wasn't sure what he might do if I even started my car, so I decided I couldn't just sit there. Slowly, trying not to draw attention, I reached for my phone to call the police. Just as I picked it up, the man in black looked up and made eye contact with me. He looked young, like really young, but I wasn't so sure. My blood ran cold when he stepped out of his car, with the knife in the right hand, and started walking towards me. I fumbled with my phone, trying to dial 911, but I was shaking so much that I kept pressing the wrong buttons. He was getting closer. Our cars were really close. I didn't see what he looked like too much because I just didn't want to make eye contact. Finally, I managed to dial the number and hit call. 911, what's your emergency? The operator's voice crackled through the speaker and I turned the speaker off. I tried to explain the situation as calmly as I could. I'm in the Walmart parking lot, I said, giving her my location. There's a man with a knife coming towards me. Please, send help. The operator assured me that officers were on their way, but I knew it would take time. I looked up and saw the man was just a few steps away. Panic surged through me. I dropped my phone, threw the car into reverse, slammed on the gas, and that was it. I didn't care about the screeching tires or the possibility of hitting another car. I just needed to get away. The man started running towards my car, but I managed to swerve around him and sped out of the parking lot. And as I drove off, I could see another dude with a hoodie come out another car that was nearby and start to run towards me. And I think he had a hunting knife too. I knew I had made the right choice to go. I was really scared, man. I just drove without even knowing where I was going. My mission there was to get out of their sight, constantly checking my rearview mirror to make sure they weren't following me. Eventually, I found myself on a quiet street, far from that Walmart. I pulled over to catch my breath and collect my thoughts. And as I sat there, trying to calm down, my phone buzzed. It was the 911 operator calling back to check on me. I explained that I had gotten away and gave them a description of the man and his car. They assured me they would send officers to the area to search for him. I didn't feel safe going home right away, so I decided to drive around for a bit longer. Man, at that point, I was really paranoid. I was unsure if I should go home now or wait at a safe area. I decided to call one of my buddies and tell him about what happened. His house was not far away from there, so I drove over there to calm my mind a little. We had a few beers and chat for a while, and then we went to the police station to report the incident. After a short wait there, I was ushered into a small room where I gave my statement to an officer. He asked me to recount every detail, from the Craigslist ad to the man's appearance and the second guy who had appeared. As I spoke, I noticed the officer's furrowed brow and the way he occasionally glanced at his partner. "You're not the first to report something like this," the officer finally said. "We've had a few incidents lately involving Craigslist transactions gone wrong. We're trying to track these guys down, but it's not easy." That revelation sent another wave of anxiety through me. This wasn't an isolated incident. There were others out there who might have actually been hurt or worse. The officer assured me they were doing everything they could, but I left the station feeling uneasy. Mike and I drove back to his place in silence. The gravity of the situation hung heavily in the air. When we got back, we watched a movie, and around 9:30 p.m., I got a call. It was the police. They had caught someone matching the exact description I had given, still in the Walmart parking lot. When I finally left Mike's house, the sun was beginning to rise already. Driving home, I couldn't help but reflect on how close I had come to real fucking danger. Meeting strangers online had always seemed relatively safe, but now I knew better. I stopped with that, man. From that day on, I swore off Craigslist and similar platforms. No item was worth the risk.